Good morning and good afternoon, good evening. If you're watching this at night, this is Lieutenant Colonel Judah, and I am going to be going through a GE3 starter video to kind of get you facilitated with what you're supposed to be doing. If you don't already have it, you should have downloaded GE2 back in lesson 24, and we'll download that to my desktop here, and I'll open this. One of the things you must always do first is make sure that the file you use is enable content on the top. And then we're way over on the wrong tab here, so I will get this set up for you. Now, if you're looking at Jet 10 as we did for GE2, and you can tell it's a little intimidating. So let me walk you through a few starter steps to make sure you understand where we're going. If you read through the GE3 exercise, I've given you a lot of instructions, namely to save often, give it a new name. You're going to modify the YF22. And then on the second page, I've given you a lot of hints and tips. It's good to go through these several times as you start to experiment. As I give you the demo, it should make sense on what I'm talking about here. All right, so let me minimize this and let me come back up here to Jet 10. One of the things we had you do for GE2 was to pre-program these cells here that are in the red box. Right now, they are strictly values. One of the first things I want you to do is make sure that each of those cells, and I'm going to pin each of these cells is labeled as general. Some of them come up as text. If they come up as text, they won't calculate, so they have to be set to general. This cell, we'll check this one, is also set to general, and we'll check the wing cell. That's also set to general. Okay, I'll give you a second or two to consider that. Remember in GE2, the yellow cells were the answers, and you had to program the equations in. Since this has already been done, for the interest of time, I'm just going to go grab the requisite equations and plug them into where they belong here. Check that. I didn't put it in. Now it's in there. And see how it came in as text up here? You want to make sure that is set to general, so it actually calculates your equation. Let's go through. This is, I could probably do this on site. This is 1 over pi in the ear, 1 divided by pi parenthesis divided by E naught, which is right down here, divided by aspect ratio. Where the heck do I get aspect ratio? That's on the main page. For the wing, just grab that aspect ratio and push enter. Okay, so that is an equation. It's set to general and it matches the solution. All right, for the wing, this one was a little bit more sporty. So this is, remember, equals 0.11 per degree divided by, open parenthesis, 1 plus, open parenthesis, 57.3 times 0.11, which is CL alpha, close parenthesis, divided by pi divided by E, which is right below it, divided by aspect ratio, which is again on the main page for the wing, right there, close parenthesis, and I'm looking up in the equation box. So let's see, it didn't like that, but it fixed it for me. So I'll hold there for a second. You can look up in the equation, you can put it on pause, or you can just check your GE2 and make sure it's all there. Make sure that it's not in text format. So that was GE2 as a quick review. Let's go to the main page now. And you should be looking at the main page. Well, what do we do here first? One of the first things we need to do is make sure that the RFP is properly programmed into the constraint requirements. Do you remember the RFP? RFP had a lot of data in it. There was the discussion on the first 2 pages, right? You had to understand what the project was. There's the purpose of this design study. Re-review the bottom of the second page. And then as you go into the third page, you're going to start to see values and numbers. For example, here are the values for the total cost of the aircraft and NRE that you're supposed to achieve. You understand the words for static margin now. That should make sense. Okay. Some measures of merit. We get into some performance requirements here. Max Mach number, 1 and 1.5 Gs in specific excess thrust power envelopes. This is what you need to present. Energy maneuverability diagram at 10,000 and 30,000 feet. NRE for 187,800 units and per aircraft cost. Here's your mission analysis and the RFP. I'm going to focus right now on specific excess thrust power, in max thrust. If you go to the piece of S lines here, you might see them pre-programmed. If they're duplicated, like in lines 9 and 10, that means there's only 2 piece of S requirements. These lines are printed on top of each other. The X can't distinguish that there are 2 requirements there. Jet 10 has more capability than we're using. You could put multiple piece of S lines in here. For your design, you only have 2 piece of S requirements, these first 2, and then the third line is a copy of the second line. So you need to verify that we're at 30,000 feet and 10,000 feet per the RFP. So 30,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 400 feet per second, 1.15 Mach, 400 feet per second, and 0.9 Mach. And yea, verily, we are there. And afterburner, 100% or 0%, 400 feet per second, and those are correct there. That means the right lines are being published. Let's take a sidebar. What's the difference between threshold and objective? In government parlance, the threshold is the minimal acceptable value. This will get you a capable aircraft for ideally the lowest cost. The objective is a wish list of better performing parameters at most likely a higher cost. So you need to ask yourself, which one do you think you're going to design to? This is a competition. If your competitors design to the threshold and make a cheaper airplane, and you design to the objective, you're like, look, my airplane is so much better, but it costs more. Which do you think the program is going to select? So I'll let you think about that. Ideally, the threshold is programmed in. If you can meet the objective at the same cost, good for you, but that's not a guarantee. Here's the landing and takeoff distances. If you go back to the spreadsheet, you need to make sure the landing and takeoff distances are properly pre-programmed before you start. You could do it afterwards. You'll just have to go back and redesign the spreadsheet a little bit. So for this one, 3,000 foot takeoff and 5,000 foot landing. 3,000 foot takeoff and 5,000 foot landing. And it already calculated that. How awesome is that? Okay. That gives you an idea of what you're going to do there. Mission analysis. This is GE1. All of this is GE1. Couple things you'll notice right away. Dash is used in terms of supercruise. I'll go ahead and edit that. Patrol. You're like, sir, we don't have a patrol leg. And that's right. Look at the distance on line 38. For distance, it's 0. That means that it won't calculate a patrol leg. So anywhere distance is zeroed out, it's not going to calculate it. You can only really edit the blue cells. So for us, we have a second supercruise leg. So I'm going to substitute this for supercruise. And I'm going to look at the second supercruise leg of the RFP. And it's 150 nautical miles. Now you should check all of these distances against GE1 and this new spreadsheet. So supercruise distance is 150 miles. Okay, so it should start to calculate that requirement. Oh, there's a time requirement here. Oh, I have to get back to you on that. End mock, afterburner. Let's see if it's pre-programmed in there. Climb, cruise, climb, supersonic. Oh, there's one super cruise leg. I take that back. One super cruise leg. I think what it is, combining the last two legs. Apologize, I wasn't prepared to do this segment. Go ahead and try to verify that the climb legs, supersonic, or descent, and remaining fuel match this table here as best you can. I'll come back, I might have to re-record this, but for now, I just want you to know that this is editable in the white cells, but largely stick to what's already pre-published. I think it might all be in here. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the rest of the discussion. Okay, how do I start with GE2 or GE3 and get a project that I can work with quickly? Look at the cost right now. We're at 138 million, and the constraint diagram is pretty decent. The workable solution should be down in this region. You don't have to necessarily land right on top of the donut. How are we doing? Good. So one of the things you can start with is the wing size. We know that wing size for this, and again, I've done this 1,000 times, so that's why I'm starting here. You can start any number of ways, but for now, I'm going to start with the wing, and I'm just going to chop it down to some random value of 600 square feet. So you're like, sir, how do you know 600 square feet? I don't. I'm kind of guessing. We're whittling down the YF22 to the AATF. Okay. So the wing has gotten smaller. You've noticed that the ailerons are now detached and the flaps moved with it. So one of the things you need to do is connect the ailerons and the flaps such that as they move together. There's a big pop-up box here too, so be mindful of these pop-up boxes. For now, I'm going to set these equal to each other. So ailerons should be equal to the flaps. And I might come back and change this, but I'm going to set this equal to the flaps. So what that means is all I have to do is change one column and the other should change respectively. And if it doesn't, I can easily go back and fix it. It's not a big deal. Okay, I'm going to leave this for now. Let me see if what happens if I set this equal to that. Oh, good, it works. Okay, I'm not going to change the NACA 4-digit. I'm going to equalize the location. That should line those up. I'll equalize the Y position. I never mess with that. The Z position, I never mess with. It's connected to the, it should be connected with the wing. If the wing moves up, it should all be moved the same. And now the ailerons and flaps are on top of each other. And guess what we call them? A flapperon. Elevon or flapperon? Well, the elevon is in the back, but it could be a flapperon, elevon. Choose your weapon of words du jour. Let's zoom out. So I made the wing smaller, 600 square feet. Let's go look at cost. Look, I've already chopped $3 million. Good for us. But I've gone unstable in my static margin. I need to move it back. So I'll only move the X position back. Now I'm over here in the X position of the wing. I'm going to put it at 22 feet. And my stability margin is back. Okay, very good. What else can we start to look at? Well, let's look at the constraint diagram. As I move this X, I'm going to affect weight and size of wing as well as thrust and weight. So that brings us to the next topic. I'm going to move to using one engine because engines are pricey. Let's go one engine. Let's see what happens to cost. Look at that. I'm down to $105 million already, but I've violated my constraint diagram. I am not producing enough thrust. And if you look at this line, line 37, oops. If you look at line 37, it's red in a couple places. That means your thrust available is not big enough to overcome the drag in those particular phases of flight. So let's go bump the thrust up. We're at 22,171. Let's make it, I don't know, 35,000 pounds. Now, if you notice, this cell, D29, should have been pre-programmed with this ratio, 35,229 divided by 22,171 times C29. That will enable the engine cycle to stay the same. This gives us what we call the rubber engine. I'm changing the mill thrust, but that will keep the Mach thrust at the same ratio as it was originally. I'm going to undo what I just did and put this back. I want you to look at the diameter of the engine. It's at 3.83 feet. When I went to 35,000 pounds of thrust, the diameter automatically adjusted. Okay. Also, one engine, 35,000 pounds of thrust. Let's look at the diagram. Always look at the diagram. Check it out. This interior rectangle, that's the engine. This exterior rectangle, that's the fuselage. What do you think I could do there? Do I need that much fuselage? It was originally designed for 2 engines. So now, let me go to my frames. These are the frames. These are the cross-sectional elements of the diagram. These black vertical lines, those are the cross-sectional elements or frames of the fuselage. So I'm going to look at about, I don't know, frame 30 feet. Let's go find 30 feet. That's roughly frame 10. And I'm going to start there. Actually, I'll start at frame 9. And I'll start to taper this to narrow the fuselage under the width column, the W column for width. I'm going to make this 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 7, all the way down. Let's go look at the image. See how the fuselage is much more tapered now? I don't need as much structure with one engine. I need less structure. Let's go see what our values look like. I'm at $116 million, so I've gone up in price. My constraint diagram has improved. I'm probably just barely making the constraints. I have gotten all the thrust I need now, and my thrust available for each leg has gone up sufficiently. What are we doing? Okay. You're like, sir, but 116 million, that's too expensive for the taxpayer. You're absolutely right. The next step we're going to probably get rid of is one of the flying control surfaces in the tail. This airplane, the YF-22, has 4 flying control surfaces in the back. The vertical surface and the pitch control surface in purple and green respectively. They're also represented in the columns here, purple and green. So for me, watch the pop-up. I'll let you read that for a second. We're going to just delete the pitch control surface for now, and I'll go back and show you your other choice, 0.001. By doing that, watch the image. It effectively makes it go away. If you put 0 in, it blows up the spreadsheet and it doesn't work. That gets rid of that. Now you're saying, well, sir, what's my pitch control surface? Well, it's because they're angled. If you see in this quadrant image here, this image, because they're angled, you're going to get both pitch and yaw control, but they're too big. And I know that because I've done this a couple times. So I'm just going to chop this down to 75 feet. And I'm going to move them back so I get the right control authority in terms of my moment arm. I can even probably put it at 50 feet. If you look at the real YF-22 and the F-35, you'll see that the pitch control surfaces are hanging off the back of the airplane. Let's go back and look how we're doing. I've lost directional stability. I don't have enough volume remaining. I can't cover the distance, and my constraint diagram is barely there. One thing I haven't talked about yet is aircraft weight, which is in the sizing section here. We want to actually chop that down. So let's, again, we're being sort of creative here. I want you to have fun with this. This is meant to be a fun exercise. When I chop down the weight of the aircraft, I also chop down the fuel, the expendables, etc. It calculates some of that. Let's look at where my constraint diagram is. Let's look at my cost. I'm at 106 million. I've gone red here for fuel. This says how much fuel I need to complete the mission. You compare it to 018, which is up here, and I'm short. Let me zoom out for you. It says I have 8,538 pounds of fuel on board, but I really need 12,198. What can you do? Reduce drag. You can reduce drag, reduce weight, or reduce the amount of thrust you have, or increase the weight of the aircraft, which adds volume and fuel. So maybe you don't want to do that. Let's chop down the thrust. Let's go down to 25,000 pounds of thrust. That's crazy. My God. But look at fuel now. I have 11,041 pounds of fuel, and I need 11,325. So I'm pretty darn close. What if I chop a little bit of weight off and go to 43,000 pounds? I'm now carrying 9,275 pounds, but I need 11,060. So I went in the wrong direction, but look at my cost, $97 million. So that's going in the right direction. Let me work on the wing. Wing is still pretty big. Let's put it at 450 square feet. Wing makes a lot of drag. I need 11,174 pounds. I have 10,184, so I got some of that back. Let's put it down to 40,000 pounds and see what happens. I now have 7,500 pounds of fuel on board. I need 10,000, so that's not looking good. What else can I do? The strakes are pretty big. I can get the strakes down to 25, strakes and chines. I can't have them disconnected, so I need to move them back on the X position. X position, I'll move them to 20 and then they reconnect. It's more like maybe 19.5. And then they reconnect, strakes and chines, right? Strakes and chines. Look at the fuselage. It's a little long compared to where the engine ends. Can I adjust the fuselage length? You bet. I can put that at maybe 55 feet. Don't push the regenerate button. It actually messes things up. Don't push the regenerate button. Don't push the regenerate button. Do you want me to say it again? Now look at my fuselage. Let me move my X position of the engine. Now my engine is nicely aligned with the fuselage. It's sticking out just a little bit. That's the hot end, so that makes sense. Look at every airplane. It has a little engine sticking out in the back, F-16, F-35, etc. And I did that here by adjusting the compressor face. You can move the inlets back. Let's put those at, let me zoom out for you here. Watch the inlets to the engine. Hopefully none of my words are new to you and you recognize every word I'm saying. See how the engine moved? Let me put the engine back at 18. And that shortens the compressor or the intakes, the ducts, if you will. Let's put it at 17. There you go. Okay. Let's go see how I'm doing on cost and constraints. I can't ignore this. I'm at $91 million. That's good. I have good constraint values. I have 8,900 pounds of fuel on board. I need 10,000. So I still need to work that. That's a challenge. Don't forget, you're being asked to compare 800 aircraft and 187 of your design versus the YF-22. So if I type in 800 here, I get a value for a purchase of 800 of 58 million. And if I put this back, 91 million for purchase of 100. Now we're trying to compare apples to apples with the YF-22. So let's look at what the cost requirement was. The per aircraft cost for 187 aircraft is $90 million. So we're getting really close. That's the threshold. The greatest designers will get down below 80 million. 60 million for 180 aircraft or for 800 aircraft and 50 million for the objective. Okay. The other thing I have neglected to mention so far are the weapons on board. Where do I program in the weapons? Well, there's the threshold and the objective. If you go back to weights and sizing, right up here in the equation line, right here, it talks about 335 times 6. Well, that corresponds with the amount of AIM-9s on board. It should be times 8. So let me just correct that. That times 6 should be times 8. What is this 2 times 191? Well, that is the AIM-9 missiles, which are right here. This spreadsheet has the AIM-9s already pre-programmed in, and then 600 rounds times 0.32 pounds per round for weight. We'll just leave that at that. You can adjust that as you'd see fit, whether you want to go for the objective or the threshold. It doesn't change much, but you should know that that needs to be corrected. Okay, what else do we have to do? Let me see. We are at 92 million for 187. We could still keep tweaking away. You can shorten, make smaller the vertical control surface. Let's make it, I don't know, 50. Remember, the vertical control surface helps your stability. Look at my CN beta. I've gone red. That's my directional control. Perhaps give it more tilt. I don't know, 25. Let's make it 45 degrees. That will give me a flatter. That made it worse. So let me put some area back in it. Or actually, you could change the aspect ratio and make the span longer, right? What if we made the aspect ratio taller? Let's put it at 1.5, okay? And then let's put the tilt back at 28 to get us more directional control. And now I fixed CN beta. Remember back to lessons 29 and 30, we talked about all the different tweaks you can make to the tail. You can change its span, its width, its location. You can move them further back and further aft. That gives you more directional control, pitch authority, based on that lever arm and how much force. Let's go see what we're doing now. We're down to 91.71 million a copy. My constraint diagram looks good. I'm still short on fuel, so how do I fix this? This has been nagging us for a while. Well, I either need to reduce drag or reduce the amount of thrust I need. That might consume less fuel, or maybe even add some weight back on. So let's go to 41,000 pounds. I'm at 9,159. My constraint diagram's really getting dicey. I still need 428. Maybe I can shave some thrust off. Let's go to 24,500 for thrust. I now have 9,284 pounds of fuel on board. I still need 10,385. So we've closed the gap a little bit. I'm still about 1,100 short. Can I make my flaps smaller? Let me go to 50. Let me make my wings smaller, maybe 425. I now have 9,435 pounds of fuel on board. My constraint diagram still barely hanging on. I need 10,434. You guys kind of get the idea here. I'm not going to keep going on with this because you can get caught into rabbit holes, and that's okay. Save multiple versions of the spreadsheet. Give them different names. Experiment with different design features. And then work your way around the spreadsheet. You want to constantly be checking things in sort of this circular pattern. You want to look at, your constraint diagram, your cost values, your fuel remaining, the fuselage. Let me change the fuel. Let me see what happens here to fuselage. If I shrink this fuselage to 50 feet, that's pretty radical. Let me go to 52. Maybe 40,000 pounds of fuel on board, 39,000 pounds of fuel, 42,000 pounds of, I'm sorry, aircraft weight. So I've been messing around up here. I got 42,000 pounds of fuel on board. Now I'm short volume remaining. What I'm doing now is messing with the vertical surface. Let me put some fuselage back in. Now look at volume remaining. I'm at -5. I'm at 90 million, 0.67. Maybe I'll go to 54 feet of fuselage. Oh, what did I do? 540 feet, 54 feet of fuselage. Now I need 10,568 pounds of fuel. I have 10,449. Oh, so close. $91 million an airplane. You guys get the idea. Just keep whittling away at it. One more thing I want to point out to you, actually, a couple more things. Go to the landing gear tab. According to this, I need 347 knots of takeoff speed. That's going almost Mach 0.35 down the runway. That is unacceptable. A general rule of thumb is stay under 200 knots for your class. So what can you do? Well, we can adjust the height. Let's see what that does. Let's put the height of the landing gear at 5 or 6. That didn't do anything. What about the position of the landing gear? And I'm moving the main gear here forward and back when I look at the X value. Let's put it at 35. Oh, boom, look at that. It took on my takeoff rotation down, but my tip back angle is too high now. What about 36? What about, let's go back to 38. I'm still pretty high. You got to keep your 90-10 rule happy. The takeoff rotation. So what helps me take off? Let me move my wing back a little bit. So my X position of the wing, I'll put it at 23 feet. Let's see if that helped the landing gear take off. Not much. Let's move it to, what I'm doing is allowing the airplane to tip back easier. 25 feet. Now, if this doesn't work, yeah, 312, I'm not getting back what I need. Let's make my trailing edge flaps a little bigger. Let's put them at 55 square feet. 300, that's coming down. What if I make my pitch control surface or my new combined pitch and vertical horizontal surface 65? Okay, I'll make them a little fatter. You'll notice everything is coupled on here. You can't really change one thing without the other. So I still don't like my main gear is at 37. I'm down to 266, 36, 228, 35. I'm down to 181. Let's go 35.5. Let's go to raising the height of the, let's see what this does. I raised the height to 7. That didn't work. I don't know. Let's bring it down to 5. Boom. I lowered the gear to 5 feet above the deck. And now my, everything's green, but generally this is too high, 204 knots. Go to P sub S and maneuverability. You can change the load factor, afterburner, and CDX and hit calculate, and that should regenerate your plot. You'll need that for the presentation. If I go to maneuverability, I have the same features. I can put in a 30,000 foot, and it'll change the chart. Oh, the chart's over here, sorry. it'll change the chart respectively. You'll need these charts for your presentation. Okay, so let's put that afterburner back in 100, and then you get a new piece of S equals 0 line. All right, we'll be here all week for EI. Feel free to contact me or Major Vor. We'll help you out as much as possible, but that should get you a majority of the way. Remember, you're trying to make this plane meet the criteria in the RFP. It is a competition. The best plane will win. You do want yours to advance. When you turn in GE3, you'll turn it in on Teams. There'll be a folder in each section. Your instructor will grade it. It is due by the start of lesson 32. However, you need to get down to something you can work and design. Read the instructions for lesson 32. It's the glider build. You need to be able to convert these dimensions onto paper. Take all your dimensions, divide by 2. That will convert and scale into inches. So if you have a 54 foot long fuselage, divide by 2, get you 27 inches. I'll tell you, the bigger gliders glide better. Okay, the bigger gliders glide better. Watch the lesson 32 lesson. Good luck, and we will see you guys on the other side. Take care.